So let's start with Sahana Bhavatu, Vakratunda Mahakaya, Saraswati Namastubhyam, and Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu. Om Sahana Bhavatu, Sahano Bhunaktu, Saha Viryankaravavahai, Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Vakratunda Mahakaya, Surya Koti Samaprabha, Nirvignam Kuru Me Deva, Sarva Karyeshu Sarvada, Saraswati Namastubhyam, Varade Kamarupini, Vidyarambham Karishyami, Siddhir Bhavatu Me Sada, Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwaraha, Gurureva Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. All right, so let's chant first verse, lead and repeat style, and then we'll chant the verse together. Vedo nityam adhiyatam tadudidam karma svanushtiyatam tene shasya vidhiyatam apachitihi kamye matistyajyatam Papogaf paridhuyatam Bhavasukhe Toshonusandhiyatam Atmecha vyavasiyatam Nijagrahat Turnam vinirkamyatam. So now together. Vedo nityam adhiyatam tadudidam karma svanushtiyatam tene shasya vidhiyatam apachitihi kamye matistyajyatam Papogaf paridhuyatam bhavasukhe doshonusandhiyatam atmecha vyavasiyatam nijagrahat turnam vinirkamyatam. So we had seen quickly that Vedo Nityam Adhiyatam. May I study the Shastras daily and as long as I'm living my life, because Vedas are the guidance for life. Once I have understood that well, this marks the end of Brahmacharya Ashrama. So one thing we have to do in Brahmacharya Ashrama, study well. Then we enter into Grahastha Ashrama, where those things that I have learned from the Shastras, may I perform them to perfection. And those and we saw 4 types of karmas, right? Tadudidam karma svanushtiyatam. Those karmas are of 4 types. First 2, which together are called as niyata karmas, nitya and naimitka, daily and special occasions duties I must do. May I offer them as my dedication to Bhagwan. This is tene shasya vidhiyatam. Tena ishasya vidhiyatam. So again, we come back to our definition of karma yoga right here. So shall we, as we do with the kids in the assembly, repeat the definition of karma yoga? So let's do lead and repeat, and then we'll say it one more time together. Karma yoga is selfless action dedicated to a higher altar. Now, the one difference I will say about the definition I give the students versus for us in this context, I'm going to change the word actions to duties. Nitya, naimitka, niyata karmas are my duties that I perform. So let's state that definition one more time together. Karma yoga is my selfless duties dedicated to the higher altar. Dang, one word messed me up. But karma yoga is selfless duties dedicated to a higher altar. This is same idea behind Tene Shasya Vidhiyatam. May I offer my duties as that worship to Bhagavan. Yes. So actions, when we say karma, is that overall. We think any action we perform for Bhagavan, right? But because of this context, we're studying the guidelines given by the Shastras. There are some duties that I must perform. There are some that I should not. So we're becoming more clear in defining what I should and shouldn't do. So with that clarity, let me take what I have to do and offer it to the feet of Bhagavan. And that leads me right into the next section here. Of the 4 types, we covered the first 2, the things I should do. Then we have 2 more left over. Kamya and Prayaschitta Karma. What do I do with these 2? These are the next 2 lines given in Sadhana Panchakam. Kamye matistyajatam. Actions that I can perform, may I learn to overcome them. And specifically, how do we overcome them? May I fulfill the desires I have through the path of dharma. Now, when I perform it through dharma, I'm doing it in such a way that I'm able to learn to grow out of that. So slowly, I am able to outgrow my kama. Then there are actions along the way. My ego gets involved. I don't do my duties that I was supposed to do. My pride, my likes, dislikes, they take me off the path of what I was supposed to do and acting in the correct way. So along the way, I've made mistakes. So to deal with that comes the last of the 4, Prayaschitta Karma. Prayaschitta Karma are of 2 types. One is specific. For a certain mistake I've made, there are atonements I have to perform to correct what I've done wrong. If I have stolen, I have to give back the money, is it not? If I've done something else, I don't need to give back money because that's not the appropriate response. So there are specific Prayaschitta Karmas, atonements for mistakes I've made. And it's quite vast, quite complex when it comes to what Shastras tell us to do. So Guruji, Swami Tejomayananji, gave us a principle of 3 things to know that we have atoned for mistakes we've made. First one is, may I genuinely regret what I've done. An acceptance of what I've done is wrong. How many times do we get into an argument with our own kids saying, you did something wrong? They're like, no, I didn't, but fine, you want me to do this? Fine, I'll go do it. Just for the sake of appeasing you, they go do what you tell them to do to atone for their mistakes, but they don't truly believe it. So have they truly atoned? No. First comes the understanding, I've made a mistake, I truly understand. Then comes picking up that specific action that will correct what I've done and take it as a sincere tapas. Let it burn a little. I won't learn until I'm hurt, It's part of the psychology of our own understanding. Let it burn a little, but it's out of intelligence, not foolish torturing of the body. Out of intelligence and understanding that I'm growing is why I've selected these tapas. Finally, I know atonement has been complete when I will never do it again. I don't even have to force myself not to do it again. My understanding is so crystal clear that I won't perform it ever again. There's that kind of strength and bhala behind that atonement. So this is why I've clarified karma more specifically into these 4 types, because we've been given instructions on how to deal with each of the 4 types. Those I'm supposed to do, may I offer it as a selfless dedication. For those that are kamas, may I outgrow them through the path of dharma. And the things I've done as a mistake, may I outgrow them through atonement. Once this is done, the mind becomes available to start thinking. It becomes settled and sharp to start analyzing what is this value of this world around me. So when we analyze what motivates us, it's very simple. I want happiness. It doesn't get more complicated than that. Anything I do, even the worm will act because it wants happiness. Okay, if that's what I want, I'm not going to change that. I'm not going to deny that. Am I getting it through the world that I've been living in? Is it true or is it not? Now I'm using my intellect to sharply analyze the path and choices I've made. So for example, actually it's kind of cool that I took a similar topic. Ignore everything else except for that one diagram on that board where it says vasanas, desires, thoughts, and actions. Just whatever's in that circle. I want to take that just for a second. When I have vasanas, these are tendencies left over from past choices I have. They're very subtle. They're in our stula sharira, sukshma sharira, the most subtle form that we carry from lifetime to lifetime. It's hard to identify it. But we see that it's there because little parts of it have boiled up to something more tangible, something more visible. They take the form of desires. Once I have a desire and it becomes stronger and stronger and stronger, I start having lots of thoughts about creating a plan to make this happen. Finally, when the plans also boil even further, finally I can't help but act itself. So vasanas to desires to thoughts, meaning plans, then finally to action. But here's a big catch. Can we say that the actions I've performed terminate the desires I had? I had a desire, I acted on it. My desire should have ended. I fulfilled it, didn't I? Is that our experience in life? No. And Shastras study the results of performing action and categorize it as either it leads to krodha or lobha. So in Shastras we hear the term kama, krodha, lobha, and etc. Etc. is just another amplification or variation of kama, krodha, and lobha. So now let's take krodha first. I've performed the action. Krodha means anger. Why? I had a plan, I did my plan, and I didn't get what I wanted. Either my plan sucks and it didn't work out, or somebody stopped me from executing my plan, or someone had a better plan and got to the results before I did. Whatever may be the scenario, I didn't get what I desired. What I'm left with is anger and frustration. The source of krodha is obstruction. So it could be a mild form of annoyance, irritability, take full-fledged and actually become anger, or it can cross all the way over into adharma where it becomes cheating, lying, stealing, killing, and the extreme forms. But the root is obstruction of desires in the form of krodha. Now I have krodha, that's a given. How does that relate back to my desires? Doesn't krodha give me the fire to fight again? My desires have become far more, hot. It's flaming, it's burning, it's become far stronger than when I first started. So that's why there's an arrow that goes from krodha back to kama, and it's a feedback loop. I didn't get what I want, therefore my desires get stronger. I start concocting more ideas, start acting even more, still get obstructed, and I'm constantly stuck in that loop. Okay, that's only one half of the story. What's the second half? Let's say by chance that we happen to get what we want. Does desires fulfill right there? No. Because we now get into the realm of greed. Lobha means greed. What do you mean? I'm not that greedy. I can share. I'm not addicted to things. I'm not greedy. That's not who I am. We're talking about the fundamental idea of what is behind lobha. Greed is, I want more. I had it, it's gone, I want it again. So when we look at the Shastras here, Puja Gurudev describes samsara or bhava sukha, that it is the Einsteinian world of time and space. Why does he pick Einsteinian world? He's known for the theory of relativity, or his most famous statement, the only thing that is permanent is change itself. An observation analysis of the way samsara works. So yes, I made a plan, I got what I wanted, but does it last forever? No, because it's subject to time and space. It is subject to decay, guaranteed. Nothing in samsara lasts forever. And as soon as that decays, I'm starting back in my loop again. Kama, desires, thoughts, actions, lobha, back to desires again. So when we say here, bhava sukhe dosho anusandhiyatam, this intellect now is starting to observe behavior, it's starting to observe motivations, and starting to observe the cycle that we live in. And we think, in this world of sensual pleasures, it's actually riddled with pain. How long am I going to struggle and suffer through this cycle again and again and again? How long? So this is when Puja Gurudev says, how long will we enjoy a chewing gum? So long as it has some rasa in it. As soon as the rasa is gone, I won't even hesitate to spit it out. Through thorough analysis of the way bhava sukha functions, seeing that dosha is inherent, pain is inherent in this temporary world, the rasa of this world is gone. I wanted happiness, look, it's not giving me happiness. So what's going to be my relationship with the world now? Spit it out. I don't need it anymore. It doesn't hold any attractive value to me anymore. It's useless. So and this is not just an intellectual exercise. Shastras will explain this to us, but it has to come to be an experience. Have I gone through each of my desires, paying acute attention to the way I think, the way I behave, the way I'm relating to the results, and what happens to my desires again? Each one of them I study in myself well, and I come to the conviction, there is nothing here. I'm done. So, dosho bhava sukhe dosho anusandhiyatam. Now, at this point, when there's no rasa left, I have no more desires for it. I have no more desires for it. The fundamental quest, I want happiness, still hasn't gone away. I haven't completely negated it. What I've done is, the path of finding happiness in the world is erroneous. That's the wrong way of trying to fulfill my happiness. So desires is not the way to pursue it, but I still need my solution. I want happiness. That's an inherent seeking of every single individual. The world is not going to give it to me. Where am I going to get this? We start thinking. Then we turn our attentions back to our shastras. We learned the shastras very well, right? They don't just leave us hanging. We reflect again on the Vedas that we have read, and we reflect on the higher states that they describe. This is when we see Atmecha Vyavasiyatam. Atma Icha Vyavasiyatam. World is not going to give me happiness. Where is that permanent state? Shastras tell me it is Atma itself. What is it? And I want it. Shastras, you promised me, my Shraddha is in you, give it to me now. Suddenly there's this mumukshutvam, this desire to actually want to find permanent happiness, get rid of samsara, it's completely temporary, limited, and constantly changing. I want stability. Give me that. This is the moment that we start to see the transition of someone graduating grahastha ashrama and entering into vanaprastha ashrama. What's really important to remember, again, this is not just by ages. Okay, 0 to 20, brahmacharya, 20 to 40, grahastha, 40 to 60, vanaprastha. What's being taught here? The evolution of maturity of mind. There are many that are still in their 90s, 100s, still addicted to the world. They are still grahasthas then. They haven't gone through vanaprastha. The key, the moment we graduate grahastha, is when we develop this atma icha and dosho anusandhiyatam. recognize the true reality of what this world is all about. I'm done with it. Give me something permanent. This is when we know that Grihastha Ashrama has done its job. The culmination is when we attain Chitta Shuddhi. The culmination of Grihastha Ashrama is Chitta Shuddhi. Shuddhi means pure. Pure of what? Pure of desires. Desires for the worldly life. Now, mumukshutvam, you can say, well, isn't that still a desire on technicality? Is that allowed? Yes, because it is the last desire to get rid of all other desires. The example in Atma Bodha that comes up relating to this is the analogy of the kataka nut. In India, when we had to purify water, you take a clay pot, scoop it into whatever water is there, and you let it sit. The sediment sinks, but there's still a lot of stuff still suspended in there. So they'll take this special nut, kataka nut, and turn it into a powder and sprinkle it on top of the water. What the special property of this nut is that it forms a film on the top initially and slowly sinks to the bottom. And what is it doing as it slowly sinks? Gets attracted to the other dirt in there and pulls it down with it. So this is a form of purification, and you're left with a pure water. So mumukshatvam, I want that permanent state. That last desire will eliminate all other desires that I have. So atma ichha vyavasiyatam. Now, once we become firm in this desire and it starts to burn within us, grihastha ashrama is over. What do we do now? The last pada of this verse, nija grihat turnam vinirgamyatam. Nija, I think it's the same word in Kannada too, nija, namma mane, my own house, nija griha, my own house, turnam, very quickly, vinirgamyatam. Very quickly, I leave my own home. Oh, what do you mean? I have to become homeless now and give up my house? What do you mean? This is quite scary. But again, we have to look at the bhava of why and keep it connected with the evolution of mind we have seen up until this point. So, nija griha, this is something I have spent so much effort in building. I have put in my sweat, blood, and tears into building this home, being a support system for those that are around me. But now I've come to this level of maturity that, you know what? This is not giving me the comfort it used to have. I built all of this because I had desires riddled in me, therefore I built this place. I've come to uproot desires itself. The same house doesn't have the value for me anymore. So, the people that lived in my home, I have served them well, but my relationship to the house itself, my relationship to the comforts there is no longer there. When the call for Atma Ichha starts to burn stronger and stronger, I can't suppress it anymore, and I am willing to leave the abode of comfort and walk into uncharted territory. Because that same comfort that my house provided me has now become a discomfort. It is too binding, it is too painful, and it's suffocating. To really push this idea again, there's an analogy. It's like a bird that has been fed well in a cage is still a caged bird. Even if a bird is fed well in a cage, it is still a caged bird. Coming to realize that I'm not living in a house, I'm living in a cage. When the vision changes, doesn't our relationship to it change? Nija grihat turnam vinirgamyatam. This home that has helped me evolve, that has taken me up to this point, I am now ready to quickly leave it. Turnam. When we say turnam, that means there's no lingering regrets. There's no lingering attachment. Maybe I shouldn't leave. I feel that itcha, but not even a single iota of lingering attachment to that house. Turnam. There is, without any compunction in my heart, I say, Tata, goodbye, I'm done. Visheshena nirgamyatam. Leave in such a way that I don't look back. There is no asakti. There is no remnant attachment to this because clarity of understanding. It's not a forced bhava. It is the result of understanding. So free from attachment, I leave quickly from the home. The same Vedas that told me to get married and to build the house, the same Vedas are telling me, quickly give it up. A fledgling bird slowly gets trained to fly, and when the wings become strong enough, does it not leap off the edge of that nest and take flight and never come back to that nest again? In the same way, when we have developed that higher vision and we've become stronger because Atma Ichha is there, I'm ready to leave. I have the strength to leave and forge into the path of the highest. So once the mind has evolved, meaning we've evolved because we see the defects of the worldly pleasures, I want none of that. I want the highest. Such a mind has become that bird that is ready to fly. So when we say, when turnam, quickly give it up, after all the purification. Don't give up the home too early. That will cause problems. If I take a frank analysis of my own mind, if there's presence of desire, may I go back to the step of the 4 types of karmas. Nitya, Naimittika, Kamya karma has yet to be fulfilled, and Prayaschitta for any mistakes I've made along the way. If there's any lingering desires left, let me continue doing the duties of Grihastha Ashram and keep working to overcome them. If I leave the home before it's complete, it's only disaster. This is what Arjuna was trying to do in chapter 1. He wasn't in that maturity state and said, I don't want to deal with this war. I want to run away. What did Bhagavan say? Grabbed him by the ear and said, stay. You have a duty to finish. Until you're done, don't give up. So the sign is when we have actually attained Chitta Shuddhi. Shuddhi, pure of desires. Then we see we are ready to take the next steps. This is the culmination of Grihastha Ashrama, when I'm ready to leave home, ready to leave the comforts of home. This brings us to the end of verse number 1. 1 pada for Brahmacharya Ashrama. The rest of this verse is for Grihastha Ashrama. Then verse 2 starts Vanaprastha. So let us now learn the second verse. Please repeat after me. Sangat satsu vidhiyatam bhagavato bhaktir dridadhiyatam shantyadif parichiyatam dridataram karmashu santyajyatam sadvidvanupasripyatam sadvidvanupasripyatam. That little junction right there. Sripyatam, sripyatam. Sadvidvanupasripyatam pratidhinam tatpaduka sevyatam brahmaikaksaramarthyatam brahmaikaksaramarthyatam shruti shiro vakyam samakarnyatam. So now let's try chanting it together. Sangatsatsu vidhiyatam bhagavato bhaktir dridadhiyatam shantyadif parichiyatam dridataram karmashu santyajyatam sadvidvanupasripyatam pratidhinam tatpaduka sevyatam brahmaikaksharamर्थ्यथां श्रुतिशिरो vakyam samakarmyatam. Sorry, the last part I got messed up. So here, this begins the duties of a vanaprastha. Now, where am I in my notes? So the very first instructions in this stage is Sangaha Satsu Vidhiyatam. Just a chanting note, by the way. You see how Sangaha has the two dots in the Devanagari, or H with a dot underneath? That is a Visarga. So when we're chanting and we're trying to be continuous with it, we borrow the sound of the letter that follows it. So Sangaha Satsu. So the first letter is Sa. So we say Sangasastu. That's how we transition into it. And in the next line, Shantyadihi. You see that Visarga again? But it's followed by Pa. It's hard to pronounce Pa without air, so we borrow Fa sound. So it's Shantyadif parichiyatam. So that's how we transition in those Visargas. So here, Sangat Satsu Vidhiyatam becomes Sangaha Satsu Vidhiyatam. Satsu, let's start with that one first. Satsu means the noble. Sat, usually we say as truth, right? Sat as truth. But in this context, it says Satsu, it's a plural form. You can't have multiple truths, so it must mean something else. Those that are noble. So plural, the company of the noble people. What am I doing with them? Sangaha, having an association or companionship with them. Association with those noble people, vidhiyatam. May I take this up as a conscious effort? Satsang. So this is a simplification of this instruction is, may I constantly put myself in satsang, association with noble people. Nobility here doesn't mean just good people. Oh, what do you mean? I hang around with good people all the time. I don't hang out with gangsters or mobsters or anything. What do you mean by noble people? Again, let's look at the context of evolution of where all we've come up till. I have Atma Ichha. May I seek out those that also have this and have advanced in this stage. So here, noble people means to those who are focused on Atma Vichara. We have just now entered into the realm of Atma Vichara, and there are many ahead of me that have progressed on this path. They have made advances, they have purified themselves, they know what obstacles they went through in this new journey. May I start having association with them. So, why is it that we want to create this relationship? Oh, sorry, one more flip side before I answer that question. May I seek association with the noble, and may I make sure not to have companionship with the worldly or extroverted. What? So now I get to be hoity-toity and put my ego on a pedestal and start judging people. Oh, you're worldly, you're sadhu, you're not a sadhu, and I start pointing fingers? No. This is an analysis of protecting my mind. It's not to judge others. It is to constantly focus on what I'm allowing my mind to be exposed to. So let the world be the way it is. Let the people be the way they are. If there are those that are extroverted, okay. But my mind is not going to be influenced by them. I know where that stands because I've chewed on it so much already. I know what the value of that is. It's not going to influence me. But I've yet to discover what the higher paths are. Let that become my influence. So, because we are with these people, their experience, their bhava, their inquiry and the dialogue they speak, it starts to soak into us and we start absorbing that. The lovely analogy was given here. It's like a thread that comes in contact with flour also gets affected. Growing up here, the only string and flower analogy is going to Tom Thumb's and seeing a bouquet of roses stuck in a bucket and it's just wrapped around with a rubber band. So it took me a while to understand this analogy. I have to think back in India, when they make malas, especially the flower markets, you can almost smell it right here. That string, they would soak in water and tie it so tightly within that mala that you can even see the color on that string. And after you take the mala, offered in puja, and the flowers have withered away, if you take the same string again and you smell it, it still has those flower smells. This is how powerful association can be. That when I'm with good people, their thought process, their bhava, I soak in. The mind becomes inspired and feels a greater sense of dispassion towards my desires and pursuit of those desires through the worldly pleasures. Their tendency will come to my mind and it allows me to take firmer steps in my own path. Whereas if I surrounded myself those that are constantly extroverted, it's hard to fight that uphill battle. So that when I take my steps in my direction, they're a little bit wavery, and every now and then I can slip back into the cycle of desire and worldly pursuits. So I want to protect that. Now, while I was reading this, two thoughts occurred to me. When I was reading an introduction written by Puja Gurudev, he was talking about association, but he made a really significant sentence in there. He said, don't rely on others. Your evolution is by your own self-effort. Full stop. That was it. And I'm like, what do you mean? You keep talking about sangaha with satsus. What do you mean, don't rely on others? Meaning that others won't do it for me. I can use their influence, but at the end of the day, it has to be my efforts alone. In this statement, Puja Gurudev is knocking out this misconceived notions that we have to go to a Baba or this mystical being. They'll touch my head or touch me or bless me, and I attain moksha and I start having a glow around me. Others won't do this for me. It is by my own effort alone that I can achieve Atma. So I allow influence to keep me on the path, but at the end of the day, I have to be the one to walk every step of that path. It's like walking in the snow. Others have walked before me. The snow has compacted and created a defined step for me to follow. There's surety in that instead of walking my own path. But at the end of the day, I have to be the one to walk that path. Another thought that occurred to me was the concept of dhyana. In Bhagavad Gita, in one of our classrooms here, they're studying the ladder of fall. What happens to someone who pursues worldly pursuits through desires? The shloka starts with, Dhyayato Vishayan Pumsaha. Dhyanam. Dhyanam is a fundamental feature of the mind, and it works in both directions. When I'm constantly ruminating and exposing myself to a certain topic, I fall victim to it. So if I'm exposing myself to the ideas of extroverted worldly people, I'll start getting sucked into that. Dhyanam, dhyayato vishayan pumsaha, I will decline that way. But I can use the same principle to help me evolve. Let me now surround myself with people that talk about Atma Vichara, those that are focused on bhakti, those that put in effort for upasanas. The more and more I hear on that, my mind gets soaked up into it, and that can help me evolve. So dhyanam is a very important skill set we have, but we need to be careful in what field we let it take off. So one last analogy here is, it's like kindling that new flame. Has anyone ever started a campfire on their own, like out in the wilderness, no lighter, no nothing? Once, right? It's very hard in the beginning. After you get the fire going, it's easy to maintain. But the starting point becomes really difficult. You have to manage the kindling, the fuel, and airflow. And in the beginning, I did this once, and it took me at least a half an hour for me to figure this out. I had to organize my sticks in terms of length and thickness of each of the stick. I had the leaves, then the tiny little twigs, then the medium size, then the big logs, and I had to have it ready. Why? Because as soon as that spark comes in, I have to quickly feed the right size and keep the airflow going in there. And if there's too much air, it goes out. Too little air, it goes out. So it's the most tender, delicate stage. Entering into Vanaprastha for the first time is as delicate as maintaining that fire. So may I use the Sangaha I have around me to keep it protected, keep it alive. Once I've gained my own inner strength, that's okay. Then I can be out in amongst anyone and still have my Dhrida in this path. But until then, may I be careful and vigilant to keep this bhava protected. So, when we take great attention and care and alertness to ensure that our spiritual life is protected in the company of the noble and wise, we're letting their experience infect me, and especially their devotion will also influence me. Now this leads us to the next pada of this verse, Bhagavato Bhaktir Dridadhiyatam. So again, it's all put together. There are a lot of sandhis in there. I'll break it down into smaller words. Bhagavataha Bhaktihi Drida Adhiyatam. Bhagavataha, for Bhagwan, in Bhagwan, with Bhagwan, Bhaktihi, I have devotion towards him, and it is Drida, very strong, stable, and firm and consistent, that endures any challenge to my Shraddha. May it be Adhiyatam. So, like there's a full force effort in making sure that my bhakti to Bhagwan is strong. So again, Adi Shankaracharya ji doesn't mince his words with these instructions. Oh, have bhakti, he'll be good for you. No, put in effort, make it strong, and make sure every action, every thought is a devotion to Bhagwan. Consciously put in our heart that devotion. It is that devotion that we catch when we keep satsanga around us. May that satsanga help us further cultivate, nourish, and develop this bhakti. Now it is in this that we start to see the application of upasana sadhana. Upasana. What does that word mean? Upa means near, asana means to sit. So does that mean I have to move my chair and bring it closer to Bhagwan just to sit near him? This means from the mind standpoint, may I become closer and closer to Bhagwan. May my thoughts be attracted in that direction and constantly hover around Bhagwan. There was a lovely depiction in Bhagavatam where one of the gopis saw Uddhavji come back to Vrindavan, and they're having a dialogue. The gopi was so jealous that Uddhavji gets to spend all this time with her Bhagwan Krishna. They almost had anger towards Uddhavji. He looks like Bhagwan Krishna and he gets to spend time with Bhagwan Krishna. And the way she showed her anger is the most lovely form. Uddhavji, he was wearing a mala. You know how whenever guests come, they put a mala. There was this bee that was hovering around that mala. So she started talking to the bee, saying, "Bee, I am jealous of you. You get to hover around Bhagwan Krishna and we're stuck here in Vrindavan. Brahmara, get away from me." What is she? That bee represents Uddhavji, and the gopis are jealous of Uddhavji because they get to spend time around Bhagwan. Do we have that kind of bhava of bhakti when it comes to our own thoughts? How come all of these Santa Mahatmas, their mind naturally goes to Bhagwan? I'm jealous of them. How come my mind doesn't do that? This is the loving relationship of Sangaha with Bhaktihi. By their influence, may I also be motivated to have my thoughts flow towards Bhagwan at all times. When I say flow to Bhagwan, what does it mean? Constantly, dhyanam. What is Bhagwan like? What does he look like? What is a character like? If he was in front of me, what would he say? When we say Bhagavan, what qualities does he have? What are the actions he's done? What would it be like if I shadowed Bhagwan through his entire Leela throughout the Ramayana? What if I was inside Ramji's pocket and I watched him act through Ramayana? The curiosity, the wanting to know, is the mind constantly seeking. That in itself becomes an upasana, to sit near Bhagwan. And how will this help? We can even look at the word Bhagavan itself, and this we shall take up next class. Bhagavan, the van of bhagas, the van, storage van of bhagas. There are 6 great wealths that Bhagwan holds or possesses. Aishwarya, Virya, Yasha, Shri, Jnana, and Vairagya. These 6 are the greatest complete wealth that Bhagwan has. So when I say I have bhakti or upasana of Bhagwan, I'm going to look at all of these and start dwelling on them, thinking on them. The more and more I revel around the supreme qualities, the more and more I think about the divine virtues, and more I enjoy and soak up the beauty of Bhagwan, the closer I'm getting to Atma Ichha. So, by performing karma as a dedication to Bhagwan in Grahastha Ashrama, I get Chitta Shuddhi. I am pure of all desires. When I'm pure, I can now apply myself to start focusing on Bhagwan. Focusing, meaning Chitta Ekagrataha. These are the 2 qualifications for realization. Chitta Shuddhi, Chitta Ekagrataha. Grahastha Ashrama will help me develop the Shuddhi. Vanaprastha will help me with this Ekagrata, this focus. So that is why at this point, you pretty much see that this is the end of the description of Vanaprastha. Very simple, 2 things. Atma Ichha, or Nijagraha, I believe. And finally, I have Satsanga with those that are noble. And may I constantly have bhakti for Bhagwan. This upasana is Chitta Shuddhi, and this is the culmination of Vanaprastha. Now, I have a couple more comments about the nature of Vanaprastha. We will go through the 6 bhagas next time. And by focusing on this, how do I live Vanaprastha Ashrama in real life, like meaning with others around me? We've now focused on what it feels like internally and where I am mentally when I'm in Vanaprastha, but how do I live that life among others while I've still got another 20 years left in me? We shall see both of these next time. So with that, thank you again for your patience. We'll do closing prayers. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namah.